Tim, good to have you here on Manufacturing Happy Hour.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, Chris.
Yeah, and I was thinking about it. There's a reason I picked this spot for this interview because I've found that
Because there's beer?
Well, because there's beer, of course. You now know that's kind of a prerequisite of the show, but also the building that this in, the Pritzlaff building, I feel has become a spot for like the Milwaukee tech community, if you will, because you got Ward 4 up top where
That's cool.
A lot of startups, co-working spaces. Actually, when I moved back here over 2 years ago, was the spot where I was working for like a week while my furniture was still in transit from California. So
Cool place for a happy hour.
it is a good spot for a happy hour and a great place for a manufacturing happy hour as well. So, to kick things off, I wanted to ask you a question to get to know you and Generac a little bit more. So I'm going to read something from your website, and then I want you to translate it in bar speak. So, it says that Generac.
Can I use ChatGPT to do that?
If you've got it in front of you, but, ChatGPT is only as good as its availability. So, I'm trying to get people to harness AI in a smart way, per se. But
Very ethical.
it does say that Generac is a leading energy technology company that provides advanced power grid software solutions, backup, and prime power systems for home and industrial applications. Now I want you to describe what your company does as if you were having a drink with someone at a bar.
Yeah, you bet. So Generac, I tell a story. Generac is kind of a tale of two companies. And so Generac, on one hand, is a 63-year-old Wisconsin born and raised manufacturing company of engines and backup generators. We have two market-leading products for spaces that we created ourselves. There wasn't backup power generators in the home or in the business before Generac created those. And those drove the engine, the cash cow, the growth, the innovation of the company for 63 years. About a year or so before I joined, so about 2018, 2019 timeframe, Generac realized that cash cow in itself wasn't exactly going to propel us to the next evolution, the next generation. There was a lot of environmental and climate change things going on with hurricanes and so on and so forth, where they saw an opportunity to get into what we call the energy technology space, newer types of energy, clean, solar, batteries, etc., selling to utilities. And so we entered into those industries by buying acquisitions, 13 of which over the last 3 years, that sort of propelled this engine manufacturing company. Its heritage, it's 6 plants in the state of Wisconsin, very production, shipment focused. Now all of a sudden we're an energy technology company, and they need a guy to come in to help transform that 63-year-old engine manufacturing company to an energy tech company. You need to be able to, speak the speak, do the things that now are expected of industries of which are potentially digital by nature from the get-go, and that wasn't necessarily Generac's vernacular, it wasn't their expertise. And so that at the same time they were evolving and transforming, they needed a leader to come in and help drive that transformation, which is why it's a perfect fit for me.
Yeah, because you've been around the block in the tech world. You've lived, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've had time in Raleigh, you've had time in Austin. Did I hear a couple others that were in your 30-year circuit of leaving Wisconsin?
Yeah. So short story, I grew up in La Crosse, so I'm a hometown guy. I love the state of Wisconsin. Obviously love lacrosse, God's country. Would love to find a way to bring lacrosse into the Milwaukee and Wisconsin tech scene. You'll hear more about that here over the course of this year. But moved away 30 years ago in high school. And Philly, Raleigh, San Francisco, Austin, Chicago, D.C., and then here. And I tell this funny story how, I went from La Crosse to Milwaukee the long way. Because you follow that sort of path. I kind of been all over the place. But at the same time, the companies that I've worked for, the industries that I've worked for, the places that I've worked for, in essence, have led me to Generac. Generac needed a transformational leader, a guy who'd been there and done it before, both with technology and with approaches and frameworks in industries. It just hadn't been done yet at Generac, and so they needed someone of my background, of all those things and all those skill sets, to kind of bring that expertise into the company. And I would say very honestly, early on when I joined Generac, there really wasn't anything new that I was doing in industry, it was new to Generac. I'd done those things before, and I was being brought in to see if those same things would apply to Generac, and they did, and it was a huge hit. And I think really over the last year and a half or so, I've really gotten my footing with my team, and I've really tried new things, new approaches, and new sorts of things that have really propelled the company forward. But it was a company that was needing and wanting a leader of my type, and I was looking for the opportunity for a sort of hometown company, and not only give back to Generac and lead their digital transformation, but also come back home to the state of Wisconsin that's been so good to me and give back to this community as well.
Well, we're going to talk about the Milwaukee, the Wisconsin tech community. We'll probably talk about tech communities in general. We're going to talk about, your role because, I'll ask this question this way. Why was the CIO the person brought in to be the transformational leader, right? Because that's, I've seen people come up with VP of digital transformation or something like that. So I'm curious to get your take on that, right?
Yeah. So just for the context, I'm the first CIO in the history of the company. And at the time I joined Generac, they were a $2 billion company, and you would think a CIO for a $2 billion company would have been a staple. And in most other industries it is, but it wasn't the case at Generac. There was a VP of IT, and at the time they were reporting to finance, but between the senior leadership team, my boss, the CEO, and the board realized that they needed a person with not only the title, but also the responsibility to drive technology advancement, knowing that we were going to acquire these companies and knowing that we were going to get into this new space, but also someone that could come in and sit at the senior leadership team and not necessarily be the geek or the nerd from a tech perspective, but demonstrate how technology can help enable the growth of the business. It was an awesome sort of realization for me because the board and my boss realized that they needed a leader of that type to come in. And for myself, I had never reported to the CEO before, and that was something in my career that I wanted to certainly take on, have a seat at the table, and drive that change. And for me, this is my first official CIO role as well. So Generac got what they wanted out of the situation. I got what I wanted to do in terms of advancing my career, and it's been a great fit and a perfect match ever since.
So you've been focused on transformation and other roles. I'm curious, what were those titles of other roles? Doesn't need to be the full resume, but I'm just curious, what other transformation, what should people be looking for in organizations to be like, oh yeah, that role is transformational or could be transformational?
So I'll go old school and I'll go new school.
Okay.
So at a major telecom company in Chicago, my title was the VP of IT for the front office. There was the VP of IT for the front office and the VP of IT for the back office, and I reported to the Chief Innovation Officer for the company. And so I was responsible for front office change, front office transformation, digital, websites, Salesforce, anything that drove sort of sales or marketing sort of transformation, not across the company, but within a certain space. So this was 2015-ish, so that was what was sort of accepting of industry back then. I left Motorola Solutions and joined an awesome company on the East Coast called Laureate Education. They owned 65 higher education institutions around the globe, and I was the VP of the digital platform. And so that role reported, once again, directly to a Chief Innovation Officer because we were being brought in to drive standardization for student experience across the globe with digital technologies. That's, in fact, where I learned all of my AI, data scientist, automation, RPA, was in the higher education space. They don't have a lot of money, but they know how to use technology extremely well because ultimately they're serving the student experience, and students are ruthless when it comes to user experience. Fast forward here to Generac now as the CIO. I own not only IT, I have cybersecurity, I have digital data AI, I have infrastructure cloud, and I have the call center. And so that is a scope of responsibility that most CIOs don't have. In fact, when I speak at conferences, I ask people in the audience, how many of you CIOs actually report directly to the CEO? And there's not a lot of hands that get raised. And so in this day and age, CIOs still have not really made the move and the push into the senior leadership team. So what I've learned from my previous roles, you cannot drive enterprise-wide digital transformation without having a seat at the table. You can drive digital transformation programs, they're just not enterprise-wide focused if you are not reporting directly to the head guy.
Do you think that's changing? Are you seeing, if you look at what you've seen from the past few years, more CIOs having a seat at that full C-suite table?
I do, and I also see that when they get that set of responsibility, then the CIO title changes. When you report to the CEO of certainly larger companies, you often become the Chief Information Technology Officer, the Chief Information Digital Officer, the Chief Information Transformation Officer. So at larger companies, they have acknowledged that the CIO can do more and can do more around the digital and transformation component, and that seat at the table helps them do that. And I'll tell you a funny story. I firmly believe you cannot drive transformation 2-3 levels below the CEO. And such a big part of driving transformation is alignment with your peers and alignment with your boss. And you may not get that 2 or 3 levels down. It takes so much effort and energy to get that. When you have a seat at the table and you're part of the senior leadership team and you're in sync with your boss, you're in sync with your peers. It's just that's the fact. And that makes transformation so much easier and so much more capacity of your energy available, not having to do all of that alignment work at the same time.
That's a great line. You can't make the change if you're like 2 or 3 levels below.
Cannot happen.
I want to talk, because there are a lot of manufacturing leaders out there listening to this that are at various levels within the organization. Some are just starting their career. Some own the company, right? We have the full range. So I'm curious what it means to be an IT or, what it means for an IT organization to be innovative. And I'm gonna read a line that I saw in an article you wrote not too long ago for, I think, CIO.com.
You've done your research.
Oh, of course. That's my job. That's my job. Anyway, I think you'll get it. You'll probably remember this, but I think you said the best CIOs want to rattle their departments, change their organization stars, and lunge at the big ideas whiteboarded in a frenzy of inspiration.
Yes.
That's the line I saw stick out. So I'll go back to the original question. What does it mean for an IT organization to be innovative?
So 2 things as context before I answer this question. So probably for the last 20 years of my career, I've been on a mission to change the brand perception of IT in general in the minds of our business partners and customers and stakeholders. IT has had a bad rap for 50 years. The back office guys, the servers guys, the data center guys, IT hadn't been viewed as very innovative. So I'm on a mission to change that brand perception of IT in the minds of our business partners and customers. In doing so, at this day and age, with digital technology, with new emerging technologies like RPA and automation and ChatGPT, the door is wide open for technology leaders who understand the tech to take that and message it in such a way and describe how it could impact positively your business by leveraging this new tech in a certain way. And if you're able to do that, you've changed the brand perception. And if you're able to get what's typically a manufacturing culture of let me see it happen first before I truly believe it's going to happen, you can change the brand perception of the legacy perception of IT by taking these newer technologies and showing what they can do for the business in a positive way. So 2 things just as contextual happening right now that completely impact that brand perception. Going back to the role of the CIO, this is such a loaded question for me because at the end of the day, everyone who's in the CIO role knows they're being asked to do more than just their job. The question is whether that person in that role can do more than what's described in their job. And I think this is the big paradox that exists with the CIOs because the role is changing. There's no doubt the role is changing. You can read a million articles about why that's the case. But are the people in those roles changing? And can they change? A CIO typically in a large company is a fairly senior person. Someone's been around for a while. I've been in the industry for 30 years. Can you change in your role at that age, at that level, with that much experience, with what now businesses and companies are asking you to do? Some can. Some take on that challenge, and some can't. And so those that can't, I find, stay relegated back to the legacy CIO role. And what ends up happening is that companies end up finding a separate and creating a separate person or a separate role for digital, for technology, for innovation, so on and so forth. And I feel bad for those CIOs that can't because it's sitting there right in front of them to take advantage, and they're just they're not stepping into that aspect. And so part of that also has to do with your personality. And so that comment that you just read, most manufacturing companies would be scared of a CIO reading that statement. Oh my God, what's this person going to do? The culture's not ready for it. The people aren't ready for this change. How is this person going to work in this company? He's not like the rest of us, so on and so forth. And at Generac, that's not the case. Generac, once again, was wanting and accepting of somebody coming in with that expertise because they knew they had to change. They knew there was a huge growth trajectory in front of them. If they weren't accepting of something like this, they weren't going to be propelled into the next generation of energy technology. So it's something that I talk about quite a bit in the CIO ranks, and what I tell them is, don't wait. Nothing's perfect.
Yeah.
What are you waiting for? Seriously.
How do you balance that then, right? Because that's actually the next question I wanted to ask, right? Like, how do you balance innovation with what I've seen you refer to as table stakes, right? Help desk, Wi-Fi, those traditional functions of an IT leader. How do you balance that?
So there's no worse conversation that a CIO could have with his boss or his peers than when there's an outage or the system is down. Every bit of innovation, every innovative project gets killed in that conversation when your system is down or there's an outage. So you have to put enough work in. You have to have faith enough in your team and the process that the normal operations of the company are going to run at an uptime type of pace that will allow a space and a capacity of yours to happen where you can actually innovate. So if you have outages and things are going down, there's no way innovation is going to occur. But if you have a team and if you have a process set up where that's actually happening and it's running at a somewhat of a decent level, there's an opening for that to occur. So then what do you do with that opening? How do you approach it? Who leads that for you? How do you learn about what's potentially sort of important in that space where the innovation window is there, but how far you can take that and stretch it is either accepting or scary.
Yeah.
And so everybody who knows me knows that I love hackathons. We were talking about that earlier today. That is a free, collaborative, open space for IT and our business partners to collaborate together. And ultimately, at the end of the day, no innovation is going to be accepting of any one of my business peers unless they know that their team was a part of it.
Well, I've got some advice I want to get out of you before this part of the interview wraps up. But maybe I think what'll help is, if you share what innovation looks like at Generac a little bit so people can kind of visualize what you're doing as a CIO. I mean, you shared a story with me like 3 months ago when we talked, like, one of your systems came out of a hackathon, right? Like, I mean, whether it's that story or something else, I'd love to hear a bit more about what innovation looks like at Generac.
Yeah. So I would say prior to joining the company, and this is no slight to Generac, is that most manufacturing companies are in this space. The IT organizations reported to finance. They were very waterfall-based, very serial in nature, and very sort of capacity constrained. And so I come in, I'm a digital guy, I believe in AI, automation, agile, DevOps, innovation. That's a different profile than what the company was used to. And so I had to sell and build a framework that was going to work and make sense, not only for those normal operating programs, but for new ideas and new programs to come into. So we fully embraced Agile, and I would say that for a manufacturing company to go all in on the Agile technology and know that instead of going from a waterfall approach, which was give me $1 million and a year from now you're going to get something out of it, to give me a little bit of money in 2 weeks, you're going to see some incremental improvement, and then 2 weeks after that, we're going to see a little bit more, and then 3 weeks after that, you're going to have another sprint, and 2 weeks after that, you're going to have a release. Changing that model sort of changed the outlook in Generac, and in the sprint review, as a part of the Agile process, became the most popular meeting in the company.
Yeah.
So everything that we do now is Agile, it's all DevOps, and the business participates, and they see the actual progress take place in front of their eyes.
And that can't be just limited to like the CIO or the IT organization. You can probably use those sprints in a lot of different functions within the company.
Yeah, absolutely. So go back to your question, though, is how is innovation defined, or how is innovation done at Generac? So when I joined the company, the CIO, myself new in the role, reported to the CEO. IT was up level. They had reported to the CFO. Now you got a new guy coming in, and now we're reporting to the CEO. So IT, in essence, held a broader accountability and responsibility for the company. And that is a huge shift for anyone who had been in IT
Right.
beforehand. And so these hackathons for me are not only opportunities for my team to show what they're made of, they're opportunities for people who have ideas at all levels of the organization who may not necessarily get a chance to be heard at any given time or any given program.
These are internal company hackathons you're talking about, right?
Company hackathons that are put
right.
on by our team with our business partners. So it gives people at all levels of the organization to participate and bring their idea, of which may not have had an opportunity to raise itself up high enough to get any attention. If you bring an idea and then you're obviously able to create something as a result of it, you're not only selling the idea, you have something to show, and people are more likely to embrace it and buy into the model. And it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'll tell you, the hackathons themselves are kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy because they ultimately initiate themselves in some sort of deployment, production deployment or some sort of implementation. So you're creating an idea, and if people like it, now you're being held accountable then to go deliver it. And so in addition to the hackathon, you also need to have an incubation and acceleration model to take that thing from ideation to production deployment. So to me, it's a talent evaluation, it's a collaborative exercise, it's an ideation exercise, but ultimately it comes down to delivering something that creates value for the business.
So I've got to think based on what you're describing, right? Like people out there thinking, what's my step one to implementing something like this in my company, right? Because it's probably weird just to be like, hey, we're hosting a hackathon tomorrow, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's got to be a way to start getting people comfortable with this way of doing things. So, because I've heard you talk before saying, hey, this is not just limited to the Teslas and the Googles of the world, right?
No, absolutely not.
Every manufacturing company that wants to be relevant, 3, 5, 10 years from now needs to be doing this. So what's the way to start driving this change, right? I know driving change is a general topic, but specific to some of the things you're talking about.
So if you're going to drive change, you ultimately have to be able to understand and articulate the value of what that change is going to do. And so in some way, shape, or form, if you've not been customer or business facing before, you've got to get business and customer facing, because ultimately you're going to have to see what moves the needle with those folks. What moves the needle in terms of your business partners, sales, customer satisfaction, customer experience, or ultimately with your customers, product quality, ease of use, installation, user experience, etc., long-term relationship, etc. You have to understand what the needle movers are between those two relationships. If you get that and you're curious enough to ask the right questions and go deep, then the next step is on you. Is what do you then do with that knowledge? Knowledge is key, right? What do you then do with that knowledge that can bring something forward that moves the needle in a positive direction from a value creation standpoint that would impress upon either that same business partner that gave you that opening or that same customer that gave you those insights? So it's a two-way street. If they open the door for an IT guy to come in and start getting that exposure and that knowledge, they're then going to expect you to do something with that. And I think that's where a lot of IT and technology leaders fall by. They ask for that first piece, but they don't necessarily follow through with the second piece. And I think that's absolutely key. Like, I can't have a hackathon if I don't do ultimately something with the ideas that are created.
Great point. Yeah, so it's getting customer facing, implementing the things that you're experimenting with, right? Yeah, I guess my last question on this topic, unless you feel like there's something critical I've missed, what I want to ask is, I'm sure there are leaders that are listening to this that are looking at their organization, and they're like, I don't know if Bob's going to cut it as an innovative leader. He's a great IT guy, but I don't know if he's ready for the big time, as we'll call it, right? What's the right way to, evolve or make that part of the organization evolve, right? Because you might need a guy like Bob on the team, for example, but maybe he's not the IT leader that's going to bring your company into the future. What's the right thing to do there?
So I personally believe it's up to the person to sort of make that call. Don't let the organization make that call of you. You be the one that make that call. And to me, like I said, if you are up, everyone knows in this day and age that you are expected to do more at work than just your job description. If you don't realize that, then you're not.
Those people aren't listening to this podcast, so I don't think we need to worry about them. This is for the overachievers.
Right, exactly. So then if you realize that, then how do you improve upon yourself? Like I get up every morning at 4 o'clock and I read. Like I cannot ask my team members to take on anything new if I don't know what I'm asking them to take on. There's no way I can have a Chat GPT hackathon if I hadn't played around myself with Chat GPT and know what it's capable of. I just cannot, as a leader, you can't ask your team members to do something with a set of technology that you're not knowledgeable of yourself. You don't need to be an expert. You don't need to be a technical, deep SME, but you need to understand what the technology does, what it could potentially do to the company, and before you ask your team members. So to me, that transformation, that personal transformation, whether it's as a result of coming up to speed on a new space, coming up to speed on a new technology. I love personality tests. I've taken the DISC, Myers-Briggs. I'm having a team offsite tomorrow. We're doing strengths finders. Any way that I can learn how to get under the skin of my team, get to understand their personality, both personally and professionally, get to understand what aspires them to do more, what makes them tick. I can position them for roles, for programs, for projects and things that I know will make them will bring out the best in them in those opportunities. And so between understanding yourself, personal transformation change, personality tests, those types of things are all ways that you as a leader can propel yourself forward and use that transformation for the organization.
I like that your answer included the things you're doing for yourself and the things that you're doing for your team as well, because I think that balance is critical. I have to ask, since you worked in San Francisco for a while, did you develop that 4 a.m. habit when you were on the West Coast? That feels like a thing that happens out there.
No, actually, I developed the 4 a.m. thing when I had kids.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. I haven't gotten there yet.
So when you're married, married and you have kids and a dog, 4 a.m. is the only time of the day where it's peaceful and it's quiet.
Yeah.
And if you're going to focus on learning, you need less distractions as possible. So for me, that's my time where I get to read books and case studies and things that I know will help me become a better leader.
Well, I know you're a reader. I heard you mention that in some of the podcasts I listened to. Like, is there a book that you found most impactful when it comes to leading through change or transformation? Right.
Yes.
Just curious if you have one that's
yes, I have a favorite book, and it's from my wonderful friend and author Suzanne Tedrick, and the book is called Women of Color in Tech. And what Suzanne tells in that story is her personal story. She was a woman of color on the IT help desk for like 15 years. And she saw men of the same role be promoted, be acknowledged, give bonuses, get promotion, move on their career much faster and higher than she was, and she had still been relegated to that same role for a long period of time. She found strength in herself to upskill, get accepted to a Master's of Engineering program, leave her job, graduate, and now she's a cloud evangelist for Microsoft and writes books and does wonderful podcasts like this. And so that book for me, if you have not been in a role of leading diverse women, and if you have not been in a role where that has been sort of a blind spot for you in terms of one, either acknowledging those in the organization, or two, giving them the same equitable opportunities as you would a male, which IT obviously has been dominated the longest time with males, then you are missing out. You have a different perspective. You're not seeing the opportunity that you would have. Obviously, you read this book. And so for me, that was eye-opening as a leader, as a person who has a diverse family, to now have a circumstance and an awareness of that in my organization. So I don't ever make that mistake as a leader. I would never want anyone saying that of me as a leader. I would want someone saying Tim fully embraces diversity, fully embraces equity, is totally inclusive and belonging of his organization. For me, that was something that was a game changer in my personal perspective.
And I'm going to include a link to that in the show notes page for everyone out there. The author and title one more time.
Suzanne Tedrick, Women of Color in Tech.
All right. Manufacturinghappyhour.com. That's where you're going to be able to find that. I've enjoyed this part of the conversation I want to switch to another area that I know you're passionate about, which is like the tech communities, right? And
Absolutely.
particularly the Milwaukee tech community. We're going to get there in a second. Actually, we're going to get to it right away, right? Because the first thing I want to ask about is, let's say your CIO community here. I think you helped create Wisconsin CIO, which is like part of the Inspire CIO umbrella. I'd love to hear more about that in general, because there are people all over the country, all over the world listening to this. But tell us a bit about that and like the function it serves.
Yeah. So previous roles, lived around the country. I'd been nominated as VP for CIO of the Year in Washington, D.C. and Chicago as a VP. I moved to Wisconsin in the greater Milwaukee area at a time of COVID. I had no talent pipeline. I never lived here before, never worked here before. I had no network, and I joined here at a time of COVID.
Honestly, that's kind of still how I feel now. I just started getting involved in the tech community here like 6 months ago or so, after moving back, after being gone for 10 years. Not quite as long as you, but still a while.
Yeah. So moving here, so Inspire CIO is a national organization, and they had 20 chapters or so, of which 2 I had been nominated. I moved to Wisconsin. There was no formal CIO network in Wisconsin, and I was nominated in Wisconsin for a Chicago CIO of the Year. And I thought that was the most bizarre thing ever. I live in Milwaukee. I'm in Wisconsin, and I was nominated for
You know what?
Chicago
It's about time
CIO.
we butt into Illinois' party, right? Like, they're always, like, pushing their influence up here. You know, let's go down south. You know, kudos. Congratulations on that.
But I also knew that a Packer fan, a huge Packer fan, the way that was never going to win.
I'm surprised you
Chicago
didn't
CIO.
come here wearing, like, Wisconsin sports gear. You're on brand, but I thought for sure it was going to be a Bucks shirt tonight or a Brewers jersey.
They're not playing. Yeah, the Bucks aren't playing tonight. So another fellow and myself, Alan Smith, he's the CIO of Baker Tilly. Kind of were in the same situation. We'd been someplace else before when we came here. So he and I got together and came up with the idea to co-found together Wisconsin CIO. That was in 2021. It was officially announced in January of 22. So basically for about a year now, we've had a formal organization. We have a formal CIO network. We've got about 35 members that are a part of this organization now. 35 members who had not been a part of any other CIO network before. And we have monthly get-togethers. We share technology topics. I have a network now. I could pick up my phone. I don't subscribe to Gartner. I don't subscribe to Forrester. I don't do any of that stuff. I pick up my phone. I have a Slack channel, not only with every single CIO as a part of our 35 group in here in Wisconsin, but also this nationwide network. I can ask, who's deployed Salesforce? What have you learned about MuleSoft? Is anybody doing anything with Workday? What do you think about ChatGPT? I have a network now, and a nationwide network that I have at my disposal to collaborate, to communicate, to connect with. And CIOs love CIOs. Yeah. CIOs love talking to other CIOs. It's kind of misery loves company type of situation. A CIO will open up completely with any other CIO. They might not do that with any other person. And so I just find both socially, virtually, and in person, these network events and groups and social interactions just allow more collaboration and sharing, and quite frankly, collaboration and sharing that I don't think was happening here before this organization was formed.
So I'm going to get broader now with Milwaukee, right? Like, I know you're passionate about building this as a tech hub, and you've seen a lot of other tech hubs in your career. We'll get to that in a second as well. But, what does it take to build up Milwaukee or a city like Milwaukee as a tech hub, right? Mid-sized, Midwestern city.
So I equate it to a lot of stuff that I talked about before with transformation. You have to have a vision and a strategy.
Okay.
A vision and strategy of what this city can become. And because I've lived in these other cities, I saw what those cities became. And once again, I'm old, so I've been in the industry 30 years, so I've seen those cities transform and what they've become. And people talk a lot about Austin and South by Southwest. I'm not trying to make Milwaukee into Austin and South by Southwest. I'm trying to tell the story of Austin and South by Southwest and Charlotte and other places like that, so that people can see how other folks have done it and can learn from that. Milwaukee is going to become its own thing. We're not trying to become one of those other cities, but by learning what those others have done will help us form our perspective and our vision. So you have to have a vision. You have to have best practices. You have to know how other people have done it. The second thing is, just like a transformation program, you have to have alignment. Okay? Who are the people? Who are the key players? And are you aligned around that vision that you just talked about and described, or are you not in alignment around how that thing is going to happen, what the approach is going to be, who are the folks that are going to own certain things and do certain things? And so I think that was a little bit lacking when I came here, and so alignment is very much key. And then the third thing, which is absolutely key, is ultimately you have to do something with it. You have to execute. You have to deliver. And so what are those things, those tangible things that we can do and do together that move the needle for Milwaukee? Whether they're conferences, whether they're organizations, whether they're causes, whether it's diversity, whether it's nonprofit, whether it's Tequity. What are those things that we are going to hang our hat on in Milwaukee that says that people will say, boy, that's a difference maker. Milwaukee's doing something cool, something unique, something that's not been done before in any other place. So you have a vision, you need collaboration and alignment, you need owners, and you need to execute.
I have two questions that came from that. So that's the first time I've heard the term Tequity, right? I think I've got a good idea of what that might mean, but can you define that for the audience out there?
Yeah, Tequity is a part of, I'm on the board of United Way, Greater Waukesha, Milwaukee County. Tequity is about giving equal sort of internet access to those across the country, across, in this particular case, across Wisconsin, so everyone can participate in the tech movement.
My second question to that then is, since you've lived in a lot of spots, you've seen Austin, you've seen Raleigh, you've seen San Francisco, I would love to hear what can a spot like Milwaukee or other mid-sized cities learn from those areas. This is going to be like a little lightning round,
yeah,
right?
Bet.
What are the strengths of these areas? So, we're not too far behind from South by Southwest this year. What's something Austin does really well?
Austin is a huge collaborative town. Austin, and part of it is that they have this Keep Austin Weird. So you move to Austin.
It's less weird than it was 10 years ago.
Right.
I'm going to say that.
But you move to Austin as a tech professional, you're expected to collaborate. Like there is no room
That's
for
cool.
like you're moving to a town that's known as a tech hub. The Keep Austin Weird thing means we're going to work together and find innovative, new, weird kind of ways that we're going to help this city improve. So that's the Austin kind of mantra. In Raleigh, Raleigh was unique because, in my opinion, Raleigh is kind of like Greater Milwaukee right now, where you have the city and then you have all these suburbs. Raleigh was hugely spread out. And so how do you bring together all these people that aren't necessarily living downtown? Like, we got to find a way. I live in Heartland, Wisconsin. I work in southwest Waukesha County.
Yeah.
I'm downtown 3 times a week. I make an effort.
Oh, okay.
I make an effort to come down and
Good for you.
mostly to come meet with this wonderful person, right here. But
we got Lena from Summerfest Tech watching our interview today.
I make an effort to get downtown because I know there's more stuff happening downtown than there is in southwest Waukesha County.
Okay.
There's some stuff happening in Waukesha County. Don't give Waukesha a bad rap. A lot of companies out there, and we do some things, but there's a lot going downtown. So if I'm going to be viewed as a tech leader in this town, I need to get downtown. So that's what I learned from Raleigh. San Francisco, the unique thing about San Francisco is obviously it's all about the startups and it's all about the VCs.
Yeah.
And fake it till you make it, type of thing.
It's in their heritage.
It is. It's in their heritage, but what I liked about San Francisco is that there was a collaborative sharing of how you did it before. Teach me how to do it. You made it. Teach me how I can make it. Now, how they made it wasn't maybe 100% of integrity, but there was a best practice sharing, and there was I'm an entrepreneur. I've already made my money. I've made my company. I want to help. I'm going to bring you under my wing. I'm going to mentor you, and I'm going to show you how to do it. So that's what I learned from San Francisco. So living around all these different cities, there was a little nugget that I took from each one of them that I hope in some way, shape, or form, people, when they think of me or speak of me, know that I'm bringing those to Milwaukee, not to copy exact, but to show how other folks have done it, and we together can find a way to do it ourselves in our own unique perspective.
I mean, the thing I learned coming back after 5.5 years in San Francisco and coming here, after that, it's like, hey, in San Francisco, you sit down at a coffee shop. There are people talking about their startups, VCs. Everyone's just there. You don't have to necessarily seek it out. What it taught me, it's like, hey, there are good budding tech communities in all these cities, right? But it's not necessarily just going to be sitting at the bar, per se, that you're going to bump into someone. You need to make the effort to find groups like, we're right here in the Pritzlaff building, right? There's a lot of startup, networking activities that take place down here. We got Summerfest.
That's why I come down.
I know. I figured, right? I was impressed, right? You're making the drive 2 to 3 times a week. I mean, what I heard in that answer was it's about collaboration and community, right? You got to be there and you got to be willing to share what you're doing was kind of an underlying theme.
So I'll steal a line here from Lena. She calls me the most approachable CIO in the area, and I hope people would say that about me because I will take any phone call. I will give anyone the benefit of the doubt. I was a new guy here 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
Like I said, no talent pipeline, no network, no nothing. I needed to build a network to make myself relevant. I needed to build a network to make Generac relevant. Generac is in southwest Waukesha County. I actually felt that Generac was more well-known outside of the state of Wisconsin than inside of the state of Wisconsin when I came. I had a mission, a personal mission to make Generac more brand aware in this area than it was, and we had to get downtown. And I got to tell you that the best story, sometimes it's better to be lucky, than good. Luck, coincidence, other. At the same time that I joined Generac with this big bold mission and big ideas, my boss realized that we also needed to have a presence downtown, and we signed a platinum sponsorship with Summerfest and Summerfest Tech, and oh my God, did that blow the door open in terms of the wonderful possibilities of even accelerating sort of that mission and that vision. So that, like I said, was the gift that just has kept on giving.
You want to hear how I first, I guess, really discovered who Generac was?
Did you buy one?
No, I didn't buy one. I was going to see Eve 6 at 2 p.m. on a Saturday at Summerfest, and they were playing on the Generac stage.
Oh,
I'm like,
okay, there you
how
go.
about that?
Yeah,
So got to know you guys after that, and then I think you popped up on LinkedIn, and I'm like, okay, they've got a super active CIO. This is cool. So it all came together thanks to Summerfest, and this is going to be coming out not too long before when Summerfest and Summerfest Tech is. So I'd love to hear from you. What is Summerfest Tech, and what role does it play in a tech community like this one?
You bet. So let me give you a little back around Summerfest first. And so part of my passion and involvement in Summerfest Tech goes back to my Summerfest days. And so I grew up in Wisconsin, moved away, but my brother stayed here. My brother lived in Milwaukee for 20 years and worked at Harley-Davidson. I would come back to Milwaukee to go to Summerfest with him. I told this story before. In one day at Summerfest, I saw John Cougar Mellencamp, Eddie Money, and Tom Petty in one day.
It's a big day.
Like
a defining day in your life, really, if I had to say.
Yeah, as a 17, 18, 19-year-old kid, however old I was, that was huge in forming my opinion, not only of Summerfest, but about Milwaukee. Like, you can do that in Milwaukee and have all this fun and then throw the sports on top of it. And so I've held a high regard, and for all of those years that I've lived away, I've always found a way to come back to Milwaukee and go to Summerfest. And obviously
you've kept the connection going.
I've kept the connection. So that has been personal for me for the longest time. If I hadn't done that, then obviously maybe I wouldn't have been as passionate as I am, but I have. The second thing that I would say is what Summerfest Tech does for me is it takes that kind of that music and Milwaukee passion that I have, and then rolls in the tech aspect of which I'm in the tech space. I'm a tech leader and an IT leader in the community. It just makes natural sense that was such a huge, perfect fit for me. The music side and the tech side sort of combine in one event, and then you throw on the Generac sponsorship, and that sort of allows the time and capacity to spend on this, because Generac wants to make the most out of their investment, and they want to make the most out of this partnership with the Milwaukee World Festival, and I am fortunately part of that team that makes that happen. So there's a company aspect to it, there's a personal aspect to it, and there's sort of a sort of growing up in Wisconsin, being true to Milwaukee kind of aspect to it. And so Summerfest Tech brings all of those things for me together in one event and allows me to give my all to that one single event.
Well, a slightly more personal question along the lines of Summerfest Tech. Then, are you excited to lead a panel with like the IT leaders at the Bucks, the Brewers, the Packers? Like, you're a Wisconsin sport. You probably know these people already, but still, that was like an iconic lineup that I saw.
Oh my God, yeah. So Lena knows this story, but when we talked about this and came up with this idea. So part of it is, yes, I know Robert and Kenny and Derek from the Wisconsin CIO and sort of the CIO networking side, but I also love those teams. I'm a season ticket holder, the Green Bay Packers, stockholder, the Green Bay Packers. I have a brick in Lambeau Field.
Nice.
I love the Milwaukee Bucks. I've been through the tough years, and I've been through the good years.
So you've been a true supporter, not just
I've worn the purple jerseys when Giannis and Chris and Drew hadn't worn them. And then the Brewers, oh my God, I've gone to games at the old county stadium and have caught, home run balls from Rob Deere and Gorman Thomas going back to the early days. So I have that team kind of perspective where I love the sports teams. And when I thought about what I could do to this event to bring the most of what I could provide is my network and my passion. I'm passionate about the sports teams, the Brewers, the Bucks, and the Packers, and I have access to these three awesome tech leaders for each of these three companies. I mean, these are companies in town just like Generac. They have a P&L, they have revenue, and they have roles like this that have to use technology to move the needle to make an impact on their business. So I thought that would be the best thing that I could do as a leader in this town with my relationships and with this theme this year being at Potawatomi. It's the best thing that I could do to bring that knowledge, that subject matter, of which I think has probably been under the carpet for a long time. I mean,
sure.
This sports team CIO doesn't have a long sort of track and a long history. These guys have been kind of behind the scenes for a number of years, but you'll hear this in the panel, what these folks do to put on those events and the technology that they bring to the table to make, and the show must go on and bring emerging tech to those events is just awesome. And I can't wait for the audience to hear that. I can't wait to fully unpack sort of their spaces in those teams and hopefully give back to somebody who quite frankly might be interested in joining one of those organizations as a tech leader someday.
Well, I'm interested, since this is manufacturing happy hour, right? What do you think a manufacturing leader could learn from one of those folks that's talking about how they're bringing tech to their events, right? What do you think a manufacturing, because I love learning from sports, right? This is the first time I'm going to learn from sports from a technology perspective per se, but what's your answer to that?
So in manufacturing, if you ever walk a Generac plant, if you ever walk a Harley plant, if you ever walk any one of these Miller plant, you're going to see a lot of trades stuff. Soldering, molding, parts, sort of things that make the factories run, technology that makes the engine go, that produce a physical product. And so that's manufacturing, whether it's, with a sports team or whether it's with one of the companies I mentioned. And so at the end of the day, all of these companies, there's a set of technology that is used to operate and produce product, and then there's a set of technologies that are used then to present your brand and your product to the customer. And so in the panel, we're calling that the fan experience. But there's an operation, sort of an IT and an OT aspect of running the show, like running the event. What does it take to keep the manufacturing lines running? What does it take to keep the Bucks, Fiserv Forum running? What does it take to keep Lambeau Field and the Wi-Fi working? What does it take to keep AmFam Field and the power and the technology going in those organizations? But then at the same time, how can you deliver a positive customer or fan experience at the same time? And so, to me, those are the parallels. I think there's a lot of parallels. We've had a couple of conversations thus far. We know how we're going to, the things that we're going to sort of unpack in that area. But ultimately, what I want to share with the audience is that if you hear and learn and see enough about these where you become interested, then how can you engage, and what are the things that you can do to potentially pursue a career or a role in one of those companies?
I like how keeping things running is like an underlying theme of the interview, from IT to what Generac does for your customers. Little final plug as well.
You bet.
So, we're here at the end of our conversation. We covered a lot of ground. Really fun talking to you today. Is there anything you wish I would have asked you that I haven't yet?
So I would say that from my perspective, we're still very early days. Mm-hmm. Like this journey of making Milwaukee a bigger tech hub, a more prominent name, we're still very, very early days. And all I would ask, if you're listening to this podcast, is ask yourself what you can do to help make this movement happen. There isn't 2 people or 3 people that are going to make this thing go. It is a collective group. It is across the state of Wisconsin. It's here in the city of Milwaukee. If you are a tech leader in manufacturing, if you're a tech leader in any other company here in town, how can you contribute? What can you bring to the table? How can you help this movement happen faster, quicker and better. We all want it to happen. We all want to experience it. We all want to be part of it, but it can't happen with a small group of folks. We need a village. We need to come together. We need more people. We need more ideas. We need more stuff to be done. What can you do as a leader in the state and the city to bring what you know and your expertise and your knowledge and your ideas to make this happen?
It's a great final point because I feel like a lot of people psych themselves out. It's like, oh, I'm just this type of person at this company, right? What can I contribute to it?
CIOs, right? Most CIOs are introverts.
Really?
Yes.
I guess that's not a surprise.
That's why we do personality tests because
okay.
because to share ideas, to collaborate, you need to be a little bit of an extrovert. You need to be a little bit outgoing. You need to be a little bit conversational. And a traditional CIO, that's not necessarily the case. So the role is changing. We're changing. Milwaukee is changing. This is a huge opportunity for CIOs and IT leaders to step up and show up differently. Like I said, for my business partners and customers, but in this particular case, for the city of Milwaukee, the state of Wisconsin.
Yeah. Well, we got a lot of manufacturing leaders from the Milwaukee and Wisconsin area listening to this. We got a lot of leaders from a lot of other spots as well. And if my contribution is just drinking beer and sharing stories of the people that are driving the change, surely other people out there can be a big part of their communities as well. So, Tim, I just wanted to thank you for being on today's show.
Thank you very much, Chris. I truly enjoyed it.
Cheers.